Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So 2 days ago, I gave you 8 takeaways that I've had thus far from the first round, and I decided to flip it on its head for this video. I decided to ask you guys on my Instagram to send in your take/takeaways. We're going through like 25 of them. Usually when I do these, when I ask you guys on Instagram and Beyond Hockey for kind of your thoughts and opinions, I usually go through like 15 to 20 of them, but because it's the playoffs, because this is the most important time of the year, we're making a long-ass video with this, and I want to get as many of you guys as I can within this video. So yeah, we're going to dive into it. These series are now either like 3-1, 2-2, or 3-2 in the case of Colorado versus the Dallas Stars. So without further ado, let's not waste any time. We got a lot of takes to go through. And up first, we got this from Julian. The refs are so bad. And yeah, I'm usually in the camp of like, stop complaining about the refs. There's bad calls on each side. There has been some pretty egregious calls and lack of calls when looking at last night, the hit on Aaron Ekblad, direct elbow to Brandon Hagel's head, and now he's going to miss Game 5. Aaron Ekblad did not at all get penalized, even though it looked like a ref was exactly staring at that. Game 1, there was some calls that were called on Ottawa that maybe shouldn't have been penalties. Overall, I do agree. There just has been, the refs have not stepped up in ways that you expect come playoff time. There's always going to be controversy. They're humans until AI or something like that is good enough to make calls. We're going to have problems with refs, but it definitely seems like this year it has been that bad and has had direct consequences on the outcome of games. It stinks. But again, what I like to say about the referees, like, these guys are usually the best. You could say get rid of all the refs, and then you're gonna have guys from the AHL or ECHL that are even worse. It's a tough situation. They got to throw a referee up in the press box or something like that to have a more bird's eye view than just guys on the ice. I think that could be a potential fix. And just we got to have a little bit of more refing improvement and maybe some ref accountability, whether that's a press conference or something after controversial calls. Next up, Gavin Bergen says Helly has been good. It's the Jets defense that is letting him down. And yes, I think both things can be true. The Jets defense has not been very good, but Hellebuyck also just hasn't been good. At the end of the day, he's supposed to be the best goalie in the NHL. You got to get big stops. Igor Shesterkin the last 3 years prior. You think the New York Rangers had the early 2000s New Jersey Devils defense behind Igor Shesterkin or in front of Igor Shesterkin? No. Their defense has been shit for years, but Igor Shesterkin makes big saves come playoff time. Vasilevsky makes big saves come playoff time. They don't get lit up in back-to-back games for 5 goals. So yes, is Hellebuyck playing like Stuart Skinner? No, not at all. But he is still playing. You expect more from, again, a top 3 best goalie in the NHL. I feel like it's last year, I think to a degree, I agree the defense wasn't good. The defense was worse, even worse last year. But at the end of the day, Hellebuyck is not making the big saves that he tends to make in the regular season. So yeah, the Neil Pionk butt goal in Game 4, not on him. The 5th goal on Robert Thomas, you got to step up and make a save from time to time. When you let in 5 goals on 18 shots, that's not being the best goalie in the NHL. All of the goals have not been complete flukes, defensive breakdowns. He needs to step up to a degree. So I'm tired. We got to hold him to this standard of being the best goalie in the NHL. And although, yes, again, not playing horrendous, but he needs to play better. Next up, Case Connor, winner of Stars and Avalanche, is cup bound. And when looking at this, I thought heading into it, these were the 2 best teams in the Western Conference. Colorado, after improving so much of their depth, as well as Dallas, if they could stay healthy, those are the better teams. And yeah, if Dallas beats Colorado and then they get Robertson and Heiskanen back, I think that they're definitely going to make the Western Conference Finals, beat whoever the Winnipeg Jets or St. Louis Blues wins that series. Unless Edmonton got Ekholm back, I would be picking the winner of this series to eventually make the Stanley Cup Final. I would agree with that, but I don't think that's some like groundbreaking revelation. I think that's kind of what we agreed heading into it. Next up, Stamati Sakelis. Sorry if I'm botching your name, man. Sound Greek. I'm bad with Greek last names. Leafs are legit, and the Lightning and Panthers are going to tear each other apart. And yeah, when looking at, again, going back to Brandon Hagel catching an elbow, Hagel having a pretty dangerous hit on Alexander Barkov. Yeah, if the Toronto Maple Leafs can win this in 5 games and then Tampa Bay wins Game 5 to take it to 6, potentially 7, it has just been such a physical series between the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers that, yeah, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Game 1, they got to get that Game 1 in the second round against those 2 teams, because those 2 teams are going to be tired and absolutely battered. So if I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, still got to beat Ottawa. I'm still worried about blowing that 3-0 lead. But, yeah, you got to feel good about your second round early in that series, at least, kind of having a head start ahead of whoever comes out of the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. Next up, Mark Gallant, 28. Everybody underestimated Minnesota. I didn't underestimate them. I had the Western Conference Finals. They almost took that goddamn 3-1 lead. They should have. Clearing attempts by Middleton and Boldy just failed them in 2 goals off that. When looking at Minnesota, I think we kind of just underestimated how good of a duo Matthew Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov are. Because if we're going to be honest, outside of those two, they've been outplayed by Vegas, as well as Gustafsson. Gustafsson has been awesome for Minnesota thus far. So I think we underestimated when this team's fully healthy, how good their high-end players there are and how good they are both ways of the ice. Joel Eriksson thrown in there as well. So yeah, I think people just didn't realize that they were a top 6, top 7 team in the regular season when they were healthy. Next up, Kalen Dean says, a Canadian team will get it done this year. And you got to be feeling somewhat decent right now for that. Toronto looks like they're going to advance to the second round and have their defense core looks so good. Edmonton, if they can get by LA, which with the way that they're trending right now with those third period comebacks, as long as they can keep that up and can actually put together good first and second periods, they're probably going to beat LA. If they get a comeback, you like their odds potentially to go on some kind of deep run. Winnipeg, you're definitely shaky on, and Montreal is out of it. At this point, I would probably say 25% chance that a Canadian team ends up winning it. I think that's about a fair handicap. Still overwhelmingly not likely, but yeah, it's definitely possible. Next up, Dallas is deep, beating a contender without their number 1 defenseman and arguably their number 1 forward. And yeah, after game 4, we thought Dallas was absolutely cooked. They got dogged by the Colorado Avalanche in that game to tie it up. But last night, they showed up in a big way. And as the broadcast kept on mentioning, their top guys weren't showing up. But in that game, Wyatt Johnston, Rantanen get goals. And once you add Jason Robertson, once you add Miro Heiskanen into that mix, it's going to be really good. Jake Ottinger held it down for a while, and they were getting depth scoring. The defense score, it still does scare me a little bit, but we were seeing it, and we're going to talk about it later. Thomas Harley has really stepped up in terms of replacing Miro Heiskanen. Yeah, Dallas, if they were fully healthy entering these playoffs, I maybe would have picked them over Colorado, and I probably would have had them making the Stanley Cup final. But yeah, I think people completely wrote them off, but even without Robertson, they still had probably a top 5, top 6 forward core in the entire NHL. Their forward core with Robertson is genuinely one of the best of like the salary cap era. Next up, Reese from the East. The Panthers are going to win again, aren't they? It's definitely possible with the way that they have taken care of the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially how good their penalty kill has been against Tampa Bay. Bobrovsky, as usual, rising to the occasion come playoff time. And just their defensive forwards have really stifled the Tampa Bay Lightning in the neutral zone in transition. And it's really been impressive. Paul Maurice just knows how to get this team, how to have success with this team come playoff time, and to win those first 2 games without Aaron Ekblad. It's awesome. They're just an absolute wagon at this point and rise to the occasion come playoff time. Next up, Arshatal Wall, Makar ghosting. When looking at Makar, 2 points in 5 games right now with the -3. He is not playing like the Cale Makar that we have come to know come playoff time. What was it, 2022? 29 points in 21 games. Even last year, 15 points in 11 games. Yeah, if he shows up like that in Game 6 or Game 7, they can maybe win Game 6 if he's not on his A game. But they're not winning 2 games if Cale Makar continues to play like this. And when looking at Cale Makar, I'm not going to dive into this. Got to wait until the full trial is done. But Cale Makar is set to testify in the 2018 Team Canada World Juniors case. So maybe his mind isn't fully on hockey, not trying to implicate him at all in that. But that's obviously something that's looming on his schedule soon. So that could also affect his play to a degree. And yeah, they need him at 100%, and that's not happening right now. And when looking at him, he's so clearly the number 1 defenseman on that team, and especially the number 1 offensive defenseman on that team. And especially in that Game 5, they kind of looked lackluster offensively because Cale Makar was not 100%. Sticking with the Colorado Avalanche, I feel like I'm dogging on him right now. Joe Dog 9 says the Brock Nelson trade is aging extremely poor for the Avalanche. And yeah, the writing was on the wall, dude. Even before he went to Colorado, I think he only had like 20 goals, 23 assists, 43 points in like 60 or 65 games. The prior 2 seasons, he was a consistent like 35 and 35 guy. So yeah, Brock Nelson, although he showed wheels on that pass to Gabriel Landeskog for his first goal back, just isn't exactly the same caliber. I still think he can be a second-line center on a playoff team, But yeah, his overall playmaking has not been there for the Colorado Avalanche. His puck possession that you always relied on in New Jersey, oh my God, on Long Island, in New York, with his long frame, with his big ass frame, has just not been there. And if he's not going to show up, similar to Cale Makar, they ain't winning this goddamn series. Next up, Nicholas Saron. Tampa hasn't lost to Florida. They've lost to Tampa. A lot of internal mistakes have cost them. I really like this take. When looking at them on the power play, they're like 1 for 14, 1 for 15, especially at the start of that third period. Get the 5-minute major up to 1. You're thinking to yourself, okay, they're finally going to turn it on. They're going to get at least one goal with this loaded power play. I believe that they didn't even get a shot off. It has just been crazy thus far. The game 1, that's on Vasilevsky. He put up an absolute stinker. Game 2, they can't even muster any goals. I believe, yeah, they were basically... Were they shut out in that game, or they didn't have a goal until later in that game? And then in this game 5, just unacceptable 2 goals in 12 seconds, the game tying and then eventual game-winning goal. It's just very uncharacteristic for such an experienced group, for such a well-coached group by John Cooper. You got to give Florida their flowers to a degree. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, when you think about what could have went wrong for Tampa, the power play would have been 17th on that list of the possible things that maybe could have been bad. Of course, missing Bjorkstrand. Now you already missed Hagel for a game in that game. Was it game 2? And on top of course, no, it was game 3. See, they won when he actually won. They won when he was actually out. My Smythe pick. But yeah, now he's out for game 5. No Bjorkstrand. It's just been very underwhelming for Tampa Bay, kind of unraveling within this series. Next up, Morency 77. Vezina winners aren't cup winners. And when looking at this, I assume that you mean guys that win the Vezina in that season don't go on to win the Stanley Cup. That rarely happens, because I think there is maybe some logic to that. Guys that play north of 60 games, 65 games are kind of worn out come playoff time. If you're just saying like guys that win the Vezina don't go on to win the Stanley Cups, that's just like factually incorrect. Vasilevsky has a Vezina, but Bobrovsky has 2 Vezinas. Holtby has a Vezina. Tim Thomas has 2 Vezinas. I disagree with that, but I do think that there is some logic. If you look at Winnipeg, they played them like 63 games, even though they were basically a lock for the playoffs by like December 1st with the great start that they had. So I think they definitely went for the Hart, and that's going to be awesome, but you want the Stanley Cup over the Hart. I think next year, if Winnipeg has this great regular season start, I think we'll see Hellebuyck probably only play 53, 54 games, especially if he wins the Hart this year. He really has nothing to prove in the regular season, and I think we will see a severe amount of load management for Connor Hellebuyck. But even last year, Bobrovsky ended up playing like 58 games. But still, I get what you're saying to a degree. It definitely looks bad because Hellebuyck's been so bad, and Ullmark has also been so bad. The last 2 Vezina winners. But I don't think that there's something like deep, like regular season merchants only, even though that has been the case for the last 2 years. Next up, Colton Stice. Is Bednar on the hot seat if he loses to DeBoer again? I think so. I don't think you fire him after this season if they go on to lose, but I think definitely next year that Stanley Cup is now 4 seasons in the rearview mirror if they have another disappointing exit. You thought that this roster was definitely good enough to beat a Dallas Stars team that did not have Miro Heiskanen and Jason Robertson. DeBoer is definitively out-coaching him right now in this series. So, yeah, I think Bednar should, rightfully so, be on the hot seat if they potentially lose this series and going forward. Still a good coach. If he gets fired, he'll get a job immediately. But for Colorado, they've only won, if they lose this series, 1 playoff series in 3 seasons with Prime, McKinnon, and Makar. I know there's been other factors like Landeskog and Nichushkin leaving series twice in the middle of it, but still, simply unacceptable, and McFarland might be on the hot seat as well. Next up, we got this from Jonathan Levi, 31. Washington are frauds, and they've had amazing puck luck all series. And yeah, I wouldn't say I've been that disappointed by Washington. I kind of know they weren't like some kind of top tier contender, but yeah, at times Montreal has just straight up looked like the better team, and especially they haven't been able to handle really the line of Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slavkovsky. What happens when they make the conference finals potentially, or even the second round with guys like Jarvis, Aho, and Svechnikov, or the conference finals when you're playing a Toronto, Tampa, or Florida, that top end talent. So yeah, I think that they easily still could make the conference finals, but based on what I've seen, the depth is nice and all, but at the end of the day, their top guys haven't really been able to perform to the level that you expect. Logan Thompson's been very good in net. He can maybe carry them a little bit. But yeah, I think what we thought about Washington is kind of coming true to a degree, and especially against a Montreal team that was one of the worst 5-on-5 teams in the entire NHL, to not thoroughly dominate like we'd maybe expect. The shots last game were a little bit lopsided, but a lot of that came on the power play from Washington. So yeah, I think we all agree. I don't think that's some kind of like hot take. That's just basically what it is at this point. Tristan, Vivana, Vegas still gets through this series and wins the cup. Yeah, I'm not at all worried if Vegas wins this in 7. Again, I think that they're playing a very good Minnesota team. The one thing that I'd be concerned about is if they don't have an answer for Kirill Kaprizov and Matthew Boldy, what is going to happen with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl potentially pop up? They're versing them in the next round and in the conference finals, like shit like that. They've been solid at 5-on-5. Adin Hill has been a little bit shaky. That scares me a little bit, but they're definitely still a top tier contender. I'm not, even though I was high on Minnesota again, so like I'm not at all worried that they're having some trouble. Minnesota is a top 10 team in the NHL when fully healthy. Next up, JC Landry. If the LA Kings lose to an injured Oilers roster, then it's the biggest failure this playoffs. Well, first up, if Toronto blows that 3-0 lead, that'll be the biggest failure. I think we can agree on that. But yeah, outside of that, maybe if Winnipeg loses, but Winnipeg has had so many injuries. So yeah, I think that LA losing to the Edmonton Oilers after being up 2-0, after having leads late into games in Game 3 and Game 4, that probably would be a bigger disappointment than, say, Winnipeg losing. I think Gabe Vilardi might be coming back this game, but still, Winnipeg, who didn't have Gabe Vilardi or Ehlers the first 4 games, they missed DeMello in Game 3. I think you're definitely spitting to a degree. If they can't beat the Edmonton Oilers when they were the far better team in the first 4 games, and they didn't have Matthias Ekholm, and they had extremely subpar goaltending, when the hell are you going to beat them? When the hell are you going to get over that hump? And I didn't expect Jim Hiller's job to be on the line heading into these playoffs, but after that dumb challenge, and again, his team just constantly folding late in games, that's definitely more on him than, say, Rob Blake. Rob Blake should also be gone, though, if they lose in the first round. But yeah, Jim Hiller's job is now, he's now fighting for his job within this series because you can pin a decent amount of these late game situations on him at this point. Next up, Ron Cooksley. The Blues have quietly had one of the best retools in NHL history. NHL history, we're going to throw out those last 3 words. That's absolutely ridiculous to say after like 2 years. NHL history, they haven't even won a goddamn round in the playoffs. But yeah, right now they do have one of the better retools cooking. Not talking rebuilds, not talking Montreal blow it up and now they're ascending. Obviously, I think Montreal has a better future than like a St. Louis Blues. But yeah, very impressive what St. Louis has done in terms of being able to utilize offer sheets for guys like Broberg and Holloway. They've drafted pretty well. I'm high on Snuggerud. I'm high on Dvorsky. Again, the only problem with St. Louis right now is I don't see a true franchise defenseman within the system. I don't see a guy that can eclipse Robertson in terms of being Robert Thomas. I just said Robertson. Robert Thomas in terms of being their number 1 forward, because although I love Robert Thomas, probably not a number 1 forward on a Stanley Cup team. I know you might say 2019, Ryan O'Reilly was much better than Robert Thomas right now. He was a Selke winner and point per game and Conn Smythe winner. So yeah, they need to hit on 2 draft picks, like out of the park hit. But in terms of surrounding this team with very good depth, Joel Hofer, I think, is a very promising young goalie still as well. It's been very good for St. Louis, but we can't say like in NHL history right now. Let's not get absolutely ridiculous. Next up, Mr. Devin, I'm going to botch that name. I won't even attempt it. Calvin Pickard will post a 9-10 plus on the way to a cup victory. Yeah, if I knew I was getting 9-10 goaltending from Calvin Pickard the rest of the way, I would say the Edmonton Oilers probably have like a 20% chance. If I knew that they were going to get a 9-10 and Ekholm was going to come back in like game 2 of the second round, yeah, they might be the cup favorite among the rest of the field, but that is, come on, let's be honest. Calvin Pickard maybe is an improvement over Stuart Skinner, but that's not saying much. He hasn't even been like that good for the Edmonton Oilers. It's just the LA Kings have absolutely fallen apart defensively late in these games. But yeah, I'd expect Pickard to stay as a starter and probably play better than Stuart Skinner would. Next, Chase 35 Meyer. The Jets need to overhaul the core. I wouldn't overreact that much. Again, the series is still 2-2. Like, we're acting like they're down 3-0 or down 3-1. There's definitely some excuses right now because of Vilardi, because Ehlers. They're missing 2 guys that were like 70-point pace this year. Let's not act like they're missing like Nino Niederreiter and Alex Iafallo. Like, they're missing big pieces. There will probably be big changes to the team this summer because I don't expect Nikolai Ehlers to re-sign in Winnipeg. But yeah, they need to make some kind of splash move through a trade because they're probably not attracting big free agents to Winnipeg. So yeah, if they lose to St. Louis in this first round, I'm not saying you move Connor, Scheifele, Morrissey, Those guys are all on fantastic contracts, as well as Hellebuyck as well, even if you think that he's somewhat of a playoff joker, $8.5 million. But I do agree that there needs to be some kind of swing. You can't be half-assing it like they've had in actually last year at the deadline, they went pretty aggressive. But this year didn't do shit in terms of like Shen and Tanev. There needs to be a big sizable move because, yeah, back-to-back seasons, this team was a regular season juggernaut. And last year they got blown out. This year it's trending bad in the playoffs. I think that they could win around, but even if they win around and then lose to 5 in Dallas, to Dallas or Colorado, that's a big failure of a season. So, yeah, this core is not, Josh Morrissey's been a little bit disappointing. This core has not exactly risen to the occasion come playoff time. Next up, Bakir Hussain. Oilers should move Bouchard to winger full-time. I'm not touching this. If you know, like back in 2021 on TikTok when I used to spew like steaming hot takes, I said the same thing about Quinn Hughes, and that aged like absolute crap. I'm going to defend Bouchard a little bit, although some really dumb turnovers and sometimes out of position. I think he is in part looking so bad. Not saying he needs Matthias Ekholm, one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL, but sticking him with Darnell Nurse, man, that's just a recipe for disaster. Two players that at times just make absolute boneheaded decisions. So, I think when he's with Ekholm, he's actually pretty solid defensively. Don't put him on wing, especially for an Edmonton team that needs defense, especially with the way Ekholm is getting up there in age and now dealing with injury. You don't move your best defenseman by far or your best offensive defenseman to wing at this point. They're kind of set in terms of forwards. Forwards is not the problem big time with this team. You got to keep Bouchard at defense. Come on. Leon Draisaitl, Conn Smythe. Yeah, he'd probably be my Conn Smythe pick right now. I'm looking at him. I believe he has 8 points in 4 games thus far. He's been awesome. He has like a 78% expected goals percentage at 5-on-5. Utterly dominant, big time, late in games to spark these comebacks and put these comebacks away. He's been awesome. He probably would have been my heart pick if he played 82 games, but he didn't. He played 71 games. If he goes on to somehow win a Conn Smythe, win the Stanley Cup, he's having one of the best seasons that we've seen of the 21st century. Next up, from Bobby Vank 3, Tampa is cooked and needs to enter a rebuild. This is a little bit ridiculous. Come on, man. They just traded 2 of their first-round picks for Yanni Gordon and Bjorkstrand. They couldn't even do it if they tried, I think. And they don't even have their first-round pick this year from some other trade that I'm forgetting. Like, they don't have their first-round pick the next 3 years, I believe. And, I mean, like, even with them down 3-1, again, they were up 2-1 late in that game. In Game 2, if they generated any offense, they could have won that one as well. Like, we need to pump the brakes on Tampa Bay. They still have elite players at every single position. I think that they're going to have to start a rebuild in 2 to 3 years once Hedman and McDonough get up there in age and Kucherov and Vasilevsky are like 31 years old. But even if they lose in 5 games this year, I still think that the pieces are still there for this team to potentially go on a run. They just ran into probably the best team, arguably, when fully healthy, in the Eastern Conference. It was between them two in terms of who I had as 1 and 2. You could maybe argue Toronto. But, yeah, they just got a really tough matchup. Relax blowing it up. Teddy Dunn, Thomas Harley is a dog, a true number 1 defenseman, masquerading as a number 2, top 15 in the show. Yeah, when I ranked my top 10 defensemen in the playoffs, I had him like number 9 or number 10. Some people pushed against it. This guy's a stud. This guy's a beast. And as you mentioned, like, Miro Heiskanen is so good. Miro Heiskanen is a top 10 defenseman, top 6, that Harley doesn't get the same shine. But the last 2 years, this guy's been around a 50-point, fantastic two-way guy, 6'3", skates like a goddamn gazelle. He's awesome. He has really stepped up. I think he's playing, like, in part because of the overtime games, like 30 minutes a night in this series. He is a true two-way beast. Last year was definitely more so offensively. His defensive game has come a long way, and now he is a definite top 20 guy. Top 15, I'd have to reevaluate my list to kind of see that. But yeah, I've been really impressed with Thomas Harley. Last year, by far the most improved player in the NHL for me. And this year somehow took another step, even though last year he was also fantastic. So yeah, if you haven't bought your Thomas Harley stock already, maybe you can get in, because I think once he's just going to continue to get better. And maybe this year, not Conn Smythe. Actually, maybe he could potentially win a Conn Smythe just because he has been that important. Next up, Justin Brazzers. Local broadcast should be able to stream games throughout the playoffs instead of ESPN and TNT. Yeah, ESPN and TNT have really dropped the ball. TNT, although I love TNT, I love the people over at Bleacher Report that do this stuff for TNT. I got to be honest, like, remote broadcast, it's kind of just unacceptable. If you want to grow the game of hockey, to do that shit, to cut costs like that, it's bad. It's bad. I hate to see it. And yeah, I wish that we could potentially have like at least the option to watch the local broadcast, the guys that know these players inside and out. I know that they might be a little bit biased, but over like a national thing. I like a lot of the national guys, but I think that would be a good alternative. And just TNT and ESPN need to be better compared to what they've been. Early on in their contracts, they were very good. First 2 years, but this year it's kind of been lackluster from the two major broadcasters. Cal and Dean, Colorado should have kept Rantanen. We got to pump the brakes on this. Before last night, the guy had 1 point. It was like a secondary assist in 4 games. I just disagree. It could go either way, but Natchez has been very good for them, and Natchez is going to make a lot less than Mikko Rantanen. He ain't going to be sniffing $10 million on his next contract, and next year is still only making $6.5 million compared to Rantanen at $12 million. So you got to pump the brakes, and they also got a second and a fourth round pick for that. Relax on that. And again, even the prior 2 playoffs, it's not like they went on some kind of deep runs. Yes, you won the Stanley Cup in 2022, but the jury is still out for the Rantanen, the overall Rantanen, include Carolina in that. The jury is still out. Next up and lastly, we got SavB04. Jets and Kings still win despite rough games on the road. We're ending on some optimism because, again, although it seems like the sky is falling for these teams, they're tied 2-2. They still have home ice. The LA Kings have been so good on home ice. Winnipeg is hopefully getting back Florida. Got back DeMello last game. It's still a coin flip series, although I probably would have St. Louis at 55% and Edmonton at 60%. It's still well within reach. You just got to flip the narrative in terms of the LA Kings holding on to a goddamn third period lead. Hellebuyck give us 900 goaltending and we might have a chance to win. It's not the end of the world. It's not Chicken Little. The sky is not quite falling yet. We're acting like these teams are down 3-1 because it feels like that based on what happened in the last 2 games, but it's not the end of the world quite yet. But thank you for sending these in. We went for 26 minutes. God damn. Thank you if you watched all the way through. I know it was a lot of yapping. Got to go drink some water after this. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.